I think on this beautiful afternoon in New York, we can begin. I know that the President would like to spend a little more time outside. Alas, he can't, but he does have to leave fairly promptly. So, President Buzek, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. There could be no greater honor for anyone associated with Europe at Columbia than to welcome President Buzek to us today. I'm David Friedberg, the director of the Italian Academy, but I speak on behalf of President Bollinger and my colleagues in all European institutions at Columbia, indeed the rest of the university, who is honored to have with us this afternoon the President of the European Parliament. Indeed, since today's event has been co-sponsored by Columbia's Alliance Program, by the European Institute and the School of International and Public Affairs, in collaboration with the European Union delegation to the United Nations, the European Legal Studies Center, and the European Students Association. The directors of all these institutes should really be joining me in this task of offering an accolade to President Buzek. But as director of Columbia's Italian Academy, your hosts in this building this afternoon, it falls to me not only to extend my welcome to all of you this afternoon, but also to convey my condolences to President Buzek and his compatriots with us this afternoon on the tragic loss that Poland has so recently suffered with the deaths of President Kaczynski and all those with him on the plane to Katyn. I am going to leave the real introduction to my colleague John Mitskill, Director of the East Central European Center, Executive Director of the European Institute, and also he has many incarichi, as we say in Italian. You forget when in these European contexts which language you are speaking. And of course, the more we can keep English out of the lingua franca of Europe, probably these days, the better. I won't risk my Polish on you. But John, to get back to the Poles, has many incarichi, whatever that might be, many jobs, I suppose, at Columbia, and he can speak much better about President Buzek than I. But can I just say that those of us who have lived in or been involved with Europe in any way have known and admired Jerzy Buzek for many, many years. In 1980, he joined Solidarność and became chair of the Public Works Committee. So I'm just going to briefly, because John will give you the full works about President Buzek, but he joined Solidarność in 1980, became chair of the Public Works Committee. We all know that from we didn't know then, but from 82 to 87, he published that lively and illegal underground pamphlet S, very important in that underground activity around Solidarność. After the triumph of 1989, he returned to his career as a professor of chemical engineering. You know, I think the time has come to expand our fellowship program here at the Academy and to offer fellowships in chemical engineering. So when eventually you leave from politics and go back to the ivory tower which you have graced before, you are coming here. He was Prime Minister of Poland from 1997 to 2001, and during his term, he had the amazingly important task of taking Poland into NATO and negotiating, perhaps even more complicatedly, the terms of Poland's entry into the European Union. It's hardly surprising that he should have been elected President of the European Parliament in July last year with the largest majority ever since the inception of that Parliament in 1979. So please join me in welcoming Jerzy Buzek on behalf of Columbia this afternoon. And so I now have the pleasure of introducing my colleague John Mitskill, whom I've already spoken about, to tell you more and as briefly as he can about President Buzek, because we want to hear President Buzek himself. John,
thank you.
You have the word.
I would have been brief anyway, but now I really will be brief. You all know who our distinguished visitor is today. For those of you who are perhaps under the age of 25, You probably know Professor Buzek as the father of Agata Buzek, who is a very well-known star who's making a career in Poland and abroad, and who recently starred in an excellent film called Rewers, which will probably be impenetrable to most Americans because it's kind of Polish in a way, and there's too much to explain for me to say too much about it. But President Buzek has a lot of friends, and right now most people are cheering for another 2 years of leadership inside the European Parliament. I don't think I have to say much more on behalf of our guest that David Friedberg hasn't already said. I will say that it is not every day that we receive somebody who has the responsibilities that Professor Buzek has in Brussels. If anybody has a lot of work to do, it is certainly he. And when I looked on the European Union site and found that he had 14 vice presidents, I said to myself, thank you, I'll just be happy with what I can do by myself. So let me please turn it over to President Jerzy Buzek.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor McGill, Professor Friedberg, for presentation, for kind words. Well, let me start with one interesting thing which happened to me just after election in the European Parliament. Some German journalists came to me and asked if I maybe know or maybe I have any relations with the Polish actress Agata Buzek. Well, I was very surprised because they didn't know me, but they knew my daughter. So it was great. You can imagine what does it mean for father, that daughter is much more better known than he himself. So it was great for me. Great news. Once again, Professor McGill, Professor Friedberg, thank you also for words of sympathy to my country. It's always very, very important to think that we are in community of people, Western democracies, and we understand so well each other, and we can overcome difficulties, just even thinking about ourselves. And it is being very, very helpful. Well, I'm delighted to be able to address you today, because as a professor myself, I always feel at home when I come to a university, especially such a university like Columbia. I wouldn't like to say too much about, because you are probably too proud of that, so I should not made to add anything for that, Mr. Professor, but very well known, and in my country, something special to be here, to study here, and to have any contact with you in university. Well, let us say a few words about past, because you mentioned solidarity. I grew up in a system where art was censored, where history was falsified, and where politics had only one color. This is why I choose the hard sciences. There's not only one reason, because I liked it all my life. It was tremendous just to do something which is concrete. Politics is not as concrete as hard sciences, but then on the other hand, in politics you can influence much more than in the case of hard sciences, usually. Well, it was easier with hard sciences in communist times, because even the communists had to accept that 1 + 1 = 2. At least, usually, they accepted. There were some expectations from them sometimes to think in different way. Dear friends, going back to our times, to our topic, as a matter of fact, I would like to make a few remarks about the political system in the European Union. Following the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty, We are going from treaty to treaty, you must know. We are all the time in transition period in the European Union. It's very important to underline. You stated your United States 240 years ago or something like that, more or less having the same constitution, and so on and so on. So you could get used for that. It's quite different European Union. Enlargement, next countries, starting from small group of countries. So we are in transition system. Now is another next treaty, very important. And what that treaty means for both Europe and the United States. Going through European Parliament, because it's our topic. I would like to mention it once again, just to remind all of us. After Lisbon, a strengthened European Parliament in the Transatlantic Partnership. Well, I will keep my talk fairly short, so I prepared it in written form, because it's easier for me to be shorter, not to have too many comments on the way. I hope it will be the case. And then questions and comments and questions and comments from yourself. I would be especially interested to hear you and your own views on these issues. Let us start from European Parliament. Well, to understand how European Union works, how we can put forward our politics. First, let me say a word about European Parliament, which I know have the honor to chair. It's a great honor for me. The Parliament has been on a rising curve of power over the last quarter century. The Lisbon Treaty takes that power to a new level. Already in most of the routine areas of lawmaking, like the single market, transport, the environment, employment, development policy, and intellectual property, the Parliament has been co-equal with the Council for many years. What does it mean? European Parliament is a lower chamber for our legislative. And Council, guided by rotating presidency, one government after another, every government half a year, having presidency of the Council. It's a upper chamber, two chambers. And for many years, in those areas I mentioned, we were co-equal. However, now with the Lisbon Treaty, we move further, not even a step, strongly further. We are co-equal with the Council, it means upper chamber, in lawmaking on agriculture and fisheries, international trade policy, justice, home affairs, and so on, so on. Nearly all international agreements, additionally, including all trade agreements, now need the Parliament's explicit approval. We have a right of veto. We have already seen the implications of that on final data transfer. As you know, it is named SWIFT of TFTP. SWIFT, it means data transfer connected with probability of terrorist attack. It's banking data and others. So, let me say, European Parliament is now very equal and similar to your Congress, to American Congress, being elected like American Congress directly in the whole European Union, every member state, every region of the European Union, having their own representatives in European Parliament. In effect, like in the United States, we now have a lower and as an upper chamber, the European Parliament and the Council in a single bicameral legislature. EU political system. Because if you want to know about cooperation, United States European Union, it's very important to understand and to know about political systems in the European Union, how we can contact what is important, just to observe our relations. In parallel, things have changed on the executive side. The meetings of heads of state and government, 27 of them, because we have 27 member states, so-called European Council, not Council, but European Council, become a separate formal institution chaired by Herman Van Rompuy. This body gives overall guidance to the Union, setting the big, long-term priorities for the Union. Today, such a priority is Europe 2020 strategy, 2020. What to do, how to organize ourselves, to be competitive, and so on and so on. So, saying what is comparable with European Council? European Council is something like collective President of the United States. It's not the same, actually, but more or less. We can imagine, because it must be simple. We have two chambers, it's simple. We have collective president, and of course we need administration. And we have administration, as you have Americans, it's European Commission. That's all. So simple. Now you understand everything. Simply stated, once again, the Council is now the counterpart of the European Parliament as Europe's legislative and budgetary authority. There are two chambers. The Commission is administration, and the European Council, collective president, jointly form the executive. In this system, the member states still remain very important. Well, it's a big difference. You have states, but your 50 states don't have such a responsibility. And not, well, you went from different position at the end of 18th century. And now we are in the European Union strongly united, but starting from quite independent member states. So still they are very important. But the European level, the supranational level, has been strengthened, and the exercise of power is shaped more than ever by the community method. Something new in the Lisbon Treaty, well, very strengthened. Now, qualified majority voting, not anonymity, is the norm in the Council. It means in the upper chamber. Now, co-decision between the Council and Parliament is the norm. The intergovernmental method between governments in the European Council, mainly, between prime ministers, chancellors, still has its place, but in a smaller sphere, in decision-making of foreign and security policy, financial resources of the Union, and some aspects of monetary union. So you see, everything shifted towards community. It makes our union stronger, more united, 500 million people, biggest economy all over the world, and biggest trade all over the world. Foreign policy is very interesting, because we have also put in place new arrangements in the field of foreign policy, which is very important. Everything is global today, you know very well. Terrorism is global, crisis is global, climate issue is global. We have a new high representative, also vice president of the European Commission, Baroness Cathy Ashton. She chairs the Foreign Affairs Council. Council is a member of the European Council, and also is connected with European Commission. So it's only one such a person in the whole European Union, because it was a question of as you know, Kissinger question about one telephone number to the European Union. There's one person in the European Union. Is a member of European Council. It means collective president. She's a member with collective. She's a member of European Commission, so member very strong of administration of the European Union. And she is a member of the Council. It means upper chamber of the European Union. One person and three responsibilities, also power, very big. The external departments of the Commission and Council will be merged into a new European External Action Service. This will give the EU a more coherent structure for developing and implementing foreign policy and present a more united face to our partners and allies around the world. Let us go to transatlantic perspectives. Dear friends, so we have a new design to the political system on the European side. Lisbon Treaty should help better coordinate us Europeans, our policies both internally and externally, to develop better dealing with the rest of the world. So important for our citizens if we want to respond to their expectations. Critical to our success is the transatlantic partnership. We feel it very strongly. We need each other more than ever before. Neither of us is big enough in today's global world to achieve our goals on our own. You are, after difficult decade, we remember in the European Union 11th of September, hard decade, crisis everywhere. And on the other hand, Europe is reunited once again and stronger. So we can be equal partner for us. In this second decade of the 21st century, the relative power of both of us, Europe and United States, is already decreasing. By the year 2025, OECD countries are expected to produce only 40% of the world's output, compared to well over half at the moment, almost 60%. So we having 60% of GDP today, all over the world, GDP. In 15 years, 40% only. And Asia will jump from 30 to 38. The same is in the demography. The rise of China, India, and other new players makes this clear to Europe. In the United States, over the last decade, you have probably discovered the limits of American power. How are we to respond? Is the crucial question. Both communities, on the both sides of the Atlantic Sea. Together, I believe that we need to take the lead in building and shaping a new form of global governance. I have always liked my friend Bob Zelig from World Bank, a former congressman, has put it that we need to modernize multilateralism. The hard truth is that unless the West is united, we will lose the ability to defend and advance our interests and values, which is as important for us as interests. If we are united, we can help define international responses in the G8, WTO, or G20. If we put on the table together any proposal, it is valid for everybody. Of course, we will not be able to solve all major international challenges on our own two entities. Not enough today. Transatlantic community is not enough. We will need to cooperate and should want to cooperate with a range of new partners around the world. But our interdependence, both of us, Americans and Europeans, can and should make us stronger. In such a world, America and Europe should still serve an axis of global stability and enlightened values. I repeat, enlightened values, on which our democracy, our civilization was built, is built. We all know that the difficult challenges we face today, economic insecurity, energy dependence, I mentioned a few of them, climate, migration, money laundering, piracy, terrorism, common action on these fronts is essential, and in addressing these issues, we will need to find ways of bringing on board in different ways Russia, China, India, Brazil, well, for climate issue, Brazil, of course, is necessary, and so on, even Saudi Arabia for piracy, South Africa. They have to become stakeholders in the new world order or disorder, so that they can expect to have a genuine sense of ownership in the way policy is set. Because genuine sense of ownership means possibility of agreements on any issue. With climate issue, you know how difficult it is. Everybody should feel responsible. The time to do this is now, whilst Europe and America are still powerful enough to make a difference. If we fail, the 21st century will be a century of insecurity and instability for all of us. We can see it. Uncertain, unpredictable, difficult world around. More than 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was so clear. Iron Curtain, well, enemy, it make you, the West, united. It was not so easy on eastern part of Iron Curtain, but while on the western part of Iron Curtain, probably you could feel very, very united, because the common enemy is always easier to keep us more disciplined. Dear colleagues, our transatlantic relationship is already very strong. Already very strong. We know very well. We feel fantastic. All the members of the European Parliament, all our delegation, my colleagues together with me. Fantastic. Like being in Europe, everybody speaks English. It's much easier. While in Europe, you know, from country to country, you cannot go to shop and to ask them. Well, it's fantastic. Well, but still, we have the biggest trade and investment flows in the world. We share the same values, and very many of our interests are the same. Of course, we differ. We have specific areas of legislation and regulation which are in front of us, because we don't understand each other, for example, or we are not close to each other. You all know the cases, Boeing versus Airbus, chlorinated chicken, very important issue, sometimes important than non-proliferation, the REACH directive, and recently SWIFT. We can address those in the Transatlantic Economic Council. It is something like that, Transatlantic Economic Council. But I think we should think bigger than that. We need to set ourselves a more ambitious challenge for the 21st century. In 10 years' time, let us implement a genuine transatlantic single market based on the 4 freedoms which already exist in Europe. We have it. Freedom of flow, movement, goods, services, capital, and people. Yes, people. I would add a 5th freedom, research results, together with intellectual property rights, which is necessary to improve. But flow in research, because education is absolutely flow and is open, but not yet research. A transatlantic market could build on one of the European Union's greatest success stories. We have great success story, the single market that we have building continuously for over 50 years. The day before yesterday, I addressed United States Chamber of Commerce and challenged the business community to put forward the ideas and proposals to achieve such a free market, to look at both sides of the Atlantic as one space of 800 million citizens. Today I challenge you, young generation first of all, but all of you sitting here, to think of a Euro-Atlantic community, not only single market. It should not be enough. We should have, well, 25, 30, 40 years ago we had desires and we were thinking about being free countries. It was impossible even to think about that, but we still had such a desire. So we could win, having in mind that it's possible. Now we also should think about Euro-Atlantic community, a common space where you can live, work and study on either side of this inner sea, which is the Atlantic Ocean. That may seem a dream, but our challenge is to change the context and create a new reality. Let me say at the very end, next weekend, 9th of May, it will be Sunday, as far as I remember, we will celebrate 60th anniversary of the famous declaration in Paris by Robert Schuman that led to the European coal and steel community. We must imagine, 60 years ago, Jean Monnet, who wrote the declaration, once said that everybody is ambitious. The question is whether he is ambitious to be or ambitious to do. Let us be ambitious to do. The pooling of sovereignty in Europe over coal and steel, pooling sovereignty on that, which at the time was the core of a nation's industry, was an incredibly bold and ambitious project. 60 years ago, the 6 countries that took part changed Europe's face and Europe's future. Not only that, also our attitude and approach to the international relations. We know that they can be peaceful, and we can go on the way of the reconciliation between nations if it is necessary. Today, let us also be ambitious to do. Let us dream not just of a strong transatlantic partnership. It's not enough. Let us create a genuine transatlantic community. European Parliament is ready to cooperate and ready to support it anytime you wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Buzek. Following up on something that David said very early on in his introductory remarks, it's worth repeating that Colombia treasures the relationship that it has with the European Union, with the delegation at the United Nations, without whom this meeting would not have taken place, without the cooperation of the Alliance program here at Columbia, which brings so many interesting speakers to Columbia and which also has a network of partners, not just in France, but elsewhere, with the European Student Association, whose representatives are here in the room, and whom we also thank for their cooperation. And last but not least, the European Legal Studies Center here at Columbia, which the very name tells you has a vested interest in pursuing various sorts of research and scholarship based on EU law. We have about a half an hour of time for questions to President Buzek, and I would only ask that when you ask your question, it is a question and not a statement, that it's short, and that you please introduce yourself before you ask your question. Sir.
My name is Larry Bridwell, and I teach international business at Pace University, and I was intrigued by your statement about how you view the European Parliament, now the equivalent of the U.S. Congress. Currently, it's controversial. The Congress is spending 25% of the American GDP with a high deficit. My understanding is the EU spends 1.25% of the GDP of Europe. So when it comes to future influence of the European Parliament, there's a big difference between Europe and the U.S. But my question would be, there's this controversial issue called
Should I
if you like.
respond or
You can.
Okay. Well,
Proszę.
maybe I will take this space. Would be easier for me, just to discuss. Well, it's of course very precise question. It's a big difference. I agree with you, because for European Parliament and European institutions is not so much money. It is our weakness as a community as well, because we have our community budget well much smaller in proportion than it is in United States. But what I hope decade after decade will be better and better from this point of view, because it is a very important, it's a strength. But I hope it is not everything, money and budget. At least from point of view of European Union, if we want to build community in which we changed war between countries to negotiation. It was the most important idea of the European Union. It's still valid. You had Americans also some trouble with Europe at the first half of the 20th century. Even later, 2 world wars started in Europe. And we had to change from warring to be part of a big family with great discussions. That is also important from point of view of European Parliament. And we need such a discussion in the European Union, because we like to have diversity in languages. You have one language. We have 23. 23 languages. Well, I know that in some parts it could be possible also second or third language in the United States year by year. But it's far away from that. 23 languages is still existing in the European Union, and we want to support it. It's our strength. Unity in diversity. And the European Parliament is working very hard for that, to understand each other. We will leave European Parliament members, 736 of us, end of Thursday, Friday morning, disappearing to our regions, spending 3 days in our regions, and then Monday we are back. We can discuss, we can express ourselves, to get to know others, what is going on in my region, what is happening, what is good, what is not good. Fantastic. So it's not only budget which is important from the position of European Union. You started from quite different perspective, having united one country from the, let's say, very beginning. So agreement with you, but I must add such an important issue. Saying about agriculture policy, it is point of our competitiveness in agriculture and food supply, and there are some points which are important from this point of view, and I can add that we certainly will reform our agriculture policy, but we will not resign from the common agriculture policy. But we would like to introduce quite a new policy. I call it European Energy Community. I propose also something like that, to be more efficient in energy issue. It's not united with agriculture, but reforming agriculture policy. It is also necessary to introduce new policies which could make us more united and more efficient. Endless border, generally speaking, except of Europe, I would say, but it's not so easy, because it's necessary to fulfill Copenhagen criteria. Democracy and some other points very important. Women's rights, for example, for Turkey, some of them could be difficult. About the army, something about politics. Well, it's not easy also for Western Balkans. If you would like to fulfill it, you must be really democratic country. That's a great, big triumph of a European Union. You know very well, end of 20th century, 99, Kosovo, hot region, Western Balkans. You do not have any problem, you Americans, we Europeans, with Western Balkans. Why? Because they are queuing to the EU membership. There's no possibility to fight each other. Must be democracy as quick as possible. Working free market economy as quick as possible. And we solved the problem. That's the power of the European Union and influence. We would like to keep our door open, but it takes time, and I cannot tell you if it will be in 10 years, 20 years. Certainly Croatia, or maybe 1, 2 other Western Balkan countries can join EU in next few years, together with Iceland. But the further steps, it is very difficult to say.
Thanks, sir. Peter Buzek, Autumn Consul General in New York. First of all, Mr. President, a big online pleasure to see you again. I was Consul General of Krakow when you were Prime Minister. And as you know, we congratulate Poland and yourself. I believe it was a very important step when 2004 the enlargement was successful undertaken. And I think it's not a coincidence that now a Polish former Prime Minister is the President of Parliament. 3 very short questions, maybe I get some long answers. When I was a young student at College of Europe in Bruges 1985, we already said we need a much stronger parliament because we all know the old criticism concerning the European Union was a lack of democracy. Whereas you have all parliaments in our countries, the European Union had also a parliament, but a weak one. Now, as you rightly pointed out, Mr. President, the parliament has become much stronger through this Lisbon Treaty. Which are your precise projects as President? Where are your priorities to use the new strength of the European Parliament? Question number 1. Question number 2 concerning enlargement, and here I have to ask a little bit more. In my former incarnation as Austrian Ambassador for International Organizations, I organized the Gimlich meeting, the informal foreign ministers meeting during our presidency, 2006. And I believe we were the first country to invite the West Balkan states, all of them, to take part in the Gimlich meeting on the foreign minister level. You said that the timeline is not very clear yet, but again, a question, which would be the next precise step? Because certainly we all need sort of a project. I mean, we all know the acquis communautaire, it's 100,000 or more pages, and it's 30 or some chapters to fulfill. It's very difficult. So which are the next steps, and what again can the Parliament do in this context? And the very last question, what is your analysis concerning the transatlantic relations, which are very important? At the same time, we know the United States has over other priorities, for instance, Pacific area. What can the Parliament in concrete terms do to reinforce these important transatlantic relations?
Thank you very much. Strong Parliament. How can I use? As a matter of fact, the Lisbon Treaty is a treaty about parliaments. The European Parliament is much stronger, as I told you, except of budget, like American Congress. I know it's very important, maybe the most important issue, budget. But in Europe, it's slightly different proportions. We must know about that. And strong parliament, very influential, democratic institution, only one between all the European institutions directly elected. And first point, I would like to use it, transatlantic partnership. So I came to United States 4 years ago, just with clear message. We are ready for strong partnership and to have connections with a congressman, with American Congress. I had a long discussion with Nancy Pelosi, your speaker, first of all, beginning of September in Rome. It was G8 meeting just now with many congressmen, more than 10 very influential congressmen, Congress persons, Congress persons, very important while we are taking care about that in the European Union. You cannot get through European Union if you are not taking care about that. So, well, it's very important. European Energy Community. I would like to support it, and the European Parliament is supporting it. Taking care about the next budget, how to organize it is another point. The Parliament is much stronger. It can influence. European External Action Service, what we were talking about, because we are responsible for financial regulations, for staff regulations, and many things for the budget. So it's great power in the hands of Parliament, and human rights, which is very important for all the members, and we are very active in this field. So I'm going very quickly to the next question. You ask about next step in enlargement, as I understood. Well, of course, Croatia. It was blockaded from Slovenia because of problems with borders. It's the same with Turkey. It's a blockade from Cyprus to Turkey membership today. And now it's a possibility because we arranged quite a new situation in visa agreement. So it's a non-visa regime with some other countries, Western Balkans. Only 3 are today without this possibility: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, and Montenegro, as far as I know. Others, it means Serbia, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, I'm very precise, not doing any mistake. Not everybody understands what I'm thinking about, but some of you, yes, thank you very much, thank you very much. And so it is great progress. And Iceland, of course. Iceland disturbs us from time to time in our inner lake between Europe and, but we can manage, we can forgive them. And you must remember, they are absolutely precisely between Europe and America. You know very well. Just in the middle of the small lake we called Atlantic Ocean. I don't know why, so proud name. And you see, they are divided. Western part should be America, and eastern part should be geographically, as a matter of fact, Europe. But they want to be a member of European Union. It's also our triumph. You see, if you are American, you must be jealous about that, because it's a tremendous island, beautiful. If you have visited this island, you know about that very well. It's well organized. I think it will be great. Well, that's it probably. What I could ask, because transatlantic relations. Well, I answered. European Parliament would like to do that.
Lady in the back.
Not only Parliament, of course, Commission and Council as well, but Parliament just would like to even take initiative. Yeah.
Yep. In the back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, it was a question maybe was not quite clear for everybody who is sitting in the back of our room. It was a question about relations with Russia after this horrible catastrophe of the Polish presidential plane. Well, yeah, it's complicated. How does it look like in the eastern part of our continent? You know very well. French-German reconciliation in 50s, 60s gave a beginning of European Union and integration on the West. German-Polish reconciliation, end of 80s, 90s, started much earlier, but end of the reconciliation, gave unity for the whole European Union, for both sides, Central, Eastern, and Western Europe. Now we need next step. As usual, very difficult on Eastern part. Not only between Poland and Russia, also between other Central Eastern European countries and Russia. Because reconciliation is necessary between closest neighbors. There's no point to go to reconciliation between, let's say, Poland and Spain. We didn't have common border and we don't have nothing against each other. So it's not reconciliation. We love each other, that's all. Reconciliation means neighbors. And it was French, German, Polish. Now there's some countries in eastern part of Europe. They wait the same with Russia. And we are ready for that. Central Eastern European countries. And this horrible catastrophe could give some impetus to this process because we were deeply touched by the Russian reaction, full of understanding and very warm, full of dignity on the catastrophe. It's a big difference in comparison to what was some years ago. And also thinking about the real the real problem, which is what happened 70 years ago in Katyn. Delegation was just going to Katyn, and the crash was because of 70 years anniversary of the massacre of Polish officers and intellectualists 70 years ago by Soviet Empire. And if we go on this way to enlighten everything what happened 70 years ago, it could be good beginning for reconciliation, not only between Polish people and Russian, but also between others. It's a maybe good beginning, but you never know, because as a matter of fact, Russia is not a democratic country. It's always more difficult. As you know, France and Germany is a very democratic countries. Also, at the end, Germany and Poland. But I am optimistic. Openness is rather big.
Thanks, President Buzek. My name is Abedin. I'm a law graduate. I'm originally from Kosovo. You mentioned that European has gone from treaty to treaty. If I can quote that Frenchman, the great President Charles de Gaulle, he once said that treaties, you see, they are like girls and roses. They last while they last. Is the European Union going to coexist always with treaties, or closer to somehow a constitution like the United States? And if I can also, I feel a duty to ask, being from Kosovo, it is great to hear about the united Europe. However, over a decade, when it came to the question of Kosovo, European Union was also united. It took our allies, the United States, to come to Europe, get the Europeans together, solve the issue. It was a European issue. Today, while Washington speaks with one voice, there are still divisions. 5 member states, again 22 member states requesting Kosovo. If you can express some thoughts on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sometimes we are, sometimes United States are quicker, sometimes European Union is quicker. In Georgia, we were quicker than United States. So you know, it depends on the country. But talking about constitution, it's too early for the European Union to have constitution. It's not easy because there are different member states, different nations, different languages. So it could be some problems with common constitution. And if we solve this problem in the future, I would like to guess today. I think on the basis of Lisbon Treaty we can be united enough and strong enough and to have a common foreign policy, which is the most important, to have common foreign policy and to answer the citizens' expectations outside European Union, because as I told you, everything is global and we must tackle the problems outside European Union if we want to help our citizens. Crisis, climate and so on, energy problem, everything is outside European Union. So having common foreign policy, security policy would be a great step forward. And I know such one country which is absolutely, for many, even longer than United States, doing very well, I think, without any constitution. You know the country?
United Kingdom.
United Kingdom. So you see, we can manage like United Kingdom, being even maybe in future empire. You see. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Nicholas Duncan, and I'm a member of the board of the Sciences Po alumni. Sciences Po is associated with the Alliance program at Columbia. If I could be allowed a very quick comment before my question. You said you were glad to be at Columbia, which is very far north in Manhattan.
Yeah, very.
You've now had about 40 minutes of questions. If you were at the south end of Manhattan at Wall Street, every single question would have been about Greece. Not one question at Columbia has been about Greece. So my question is not about Greece, but I just wanted to point out that that's the difference between an academic audience and a financial audience. My question is about your project for a transatlantic community. And you meant, the United States at this point is actually quite divided on some political issues. European idealism is actually quite united in certain ways. And as you mentioned, when the European Union started, the coal and steel community started, you had to start somewhere. And that was coal and steel. If you wanted to start the transatlantic community that you referred to, thinking about your 5 freedoms, where would you start?
Well, with 5 freedoms. If we start with 5 freedoms, we don't have common single market between us. Maybe for capital, almost. Now we don't know exactly with hedge funds, but rest maybe is okay. But rest, flow of people, for example, visa regime for 4 countries, European Union members, and goods, for example, free movement of goods. We need common standards. Without common standards, we cannot have a free movement of goods, and so on, so on. Services, well, far away from common market. If you have single common market, it would be great for our community. Well, because we are very pragmatic, as you said, we are very romantic, so you need much more romanticism and we need much more pragmatism. And that would be great, you see. Let us go to us. Yeah. Some romanticism is necessary. I am the best prepared for Greece.
My question is, you achieved a lot in domestic policy, politics in Poland, and achieved a lot in academia. Right now you're currently in the European Union. What do you consider as your next steps after your term in the European Parliament finishes? Where do you want to go?
Well, that's a question. Well, can I give you answer in written form later? Because I must think about that. I didn't think. Well, I didn't have time to. Well, I have another 2.5 years in European Parliament because it's my term in office only 2.5 years. First part of the term of the European Parliament. Then 2.5 years being an ordinary member of European Parliament. I just last term 5 years. I was ordinary member of European Parliament as having such an amount of work. I was a member of Energy Committee, Environmental Committee, and Climate Change Committee. You can imagine. Well, everything was so interesting and going ahead and so on and so on. So I have a 2.5 years time for thinking about that. But thankful for your question. I just start today, certainly.
Seamus.
I'm Seamus from Okay, let's bring in Greece. With the Greek difficulties, what do you think that means for Poland's plans?
Well, it's a good idea, great idea. Many other countries, not only Poland, would like to join Euro. Now they want to influence on the Eurozone by stating together what it should be working in the future. Until the end of this year, Mr. Van Rompuy, president of our collective president, I would say, president of our collective president would like to finish response for this issue until the end of the year, until December, and to prepare regulations, supervision of the Eurozone in the proper way, how it should work in the future. So for all the countries which want to join European Union, it's open and we want to join. It's not easy now because we are in crisis still. We're just recovery step by step, but certainly the Eurozone will be richer for next 5 or 6 countries which are queuing for Eurozone.
Lucia.
Yes. It's European Commission. It means administration. Saying in American way is administration of the European Union. It means European Commission, with Mr. Barroso as the leader of the European Commission. And they are responsible for checking such things. And there's some delays. I agree with you, some delays, and we should improve it. We're also not so, quite clear everything in Eurozone, so it's just some problems, and we would like to improve it very, very strongly and to check it every year, every half a year if it is necessary. Certainly, certainly, madam.
Eric Chenoweth with the Institute for Democracy in Eastern Europe and just one quick comment. Your call for the Transatlantic Union was something that 20 years ago William Kirkland of the USLCMO was well. During the debate on NAFTA, he argued that European connection, we had no other connection to the European Union. My question is about EU policy with Belarus.
Sorry, about?
Belarus. EU policy with Belarus. If there has been a policy of engagement with the Lukashenko regime, and while the Lukashenko regime has responded to some very precise things that have been asked of he has generally kept a very strong trust regime in place, and recently the local elections show again that he does not intend to have any opening at all to that position. Before the presidential election, is it possible that there will be more pressure put to bear on the Lukashenko regime that might help make the presidential elections?
Okay, maybe all the questions until the end, and then all of them to answer because it will be. Yeah, maybe two or three other questions. Very quickly, yes, madam.
I would like to
Sorry.
I would like to ask about the future energetic independence of European Union in the future, because I don't see this, with this Nord Stream and South Stream. I don't see the future vision of the energetic independence.
Yeah, good question. Next question, if I could ask you. Well, you sorry, because you should lead it, not me. But I am so quick that, well, because my plane is waiting and Iceland is not disturbing.
President, I'm the Constituent of Cyprus. I was responsible for the relations between Cyprus and the European Parliament for 4 years. Until 2007, I have watched you at the European Parliament. You're an excellent member of the European Parliament. My question is on climate change. Given there was no substantial agreement in December, how can the European Union and the United States proceed to combat the problems caused by climate change?
Yeah, that's
My name is Elton, and I'm a student at STIPA. I'm from Albania, so I was wondering how long will it take Albania to join the EU and what next steps? Thank you.
Briefly.
well. Next, three, only three. One.
My name is Natalia Costas. I'm from Katowice, and I'm also a non-governmental representative of the United Nations. I'm following climate change this year, and I have a question more concerning the U.S. and EU dialogue on development that was reached a couple weeks ago on MDGs, food security, and climate change. And what role, I'd like to ask for your perspective on what role in women and women's empowerment and gender issues you see in that dialogue, since they're an vulnerable population.
Three questions together, madam. Okay, you are very, very clever. Great. Well, next question, yeah, please. Yeah.
My name is Albert Bloomsbury. I'm a practicing attorney, and I'm a member of New York City Bar's Internet Trade Committee. I have a chance to speak to Mr. Tanger this last December about the new Lisbon Treaty, and because of this, we are actually working on a paper as to how to enhance the legal coordination to remove the non-type kind of barrier. And one of the questions, I'm very curious about the resolution of Parliament, March 10, talking about Parliament decide to just encourage the institutional enhancement of the Transatlantic Council, and specifically dictate that Baroness Ashton would work on this end. So my question, what is exactly, what does the Parliament exactly mean that the institutional enhancement of this TCF?
The last question, madam. Greece question.
Yes. Do you think that after this current crisis, there's going to be any talks in the European Union about creating some sort of joint fiscal policy and fiscal responsibility of the European Union?
I answered the last question because I remember it. And the rest you must wait until the next meeting. Well, well, okay. Crisis. Let us say very, very simply. Solidarity works in the European Union, I'm quite sure. But except solidarity, we also need responsibility. And it was also a question about how European Commission is ready to check it, what is necessary in the European Union from point of view of legal judgment. And that's it. Responsibility is necessary also in economy. If you have solidarity, you support. But I can tell you, I met Mr. Papandreou, Prime Minister, 6 weeks ago. They prepared very tough, hard program of reforms. It's very difficult. But now responsibility, I hope, will work also in the case of Greece. So solidarity works. And in few days it will, by my opinion, will be arranged. Madam Ashton and European Parliament, well, we have a lot of connections because we have almost 40 permanent delegations from European Parliament to all the countries all over the world. One of the biggest and most influential delegation, constant delegation, is to United States. We have also transatlantic legislators dialogue. We would like to exchange staffers. We would like to have contacts on the level of committees, rapporteurs, to have joint trips to third countries like India, Bangladesh, or some others, from European Parliament, from American Congress, and so on, so on. So between such activities, also so important is European Parliament activity. And for Madame Ashton could be great help if we are dealing with Middle East today. We have Euro-Mediterranean Parliamentary Assembly. Only one such assembly all over the world in which Palestinian and Israeli sitting in the same hall, using the same microphone, and talking with others, discussing. Fantastic. So it's great help for Madame Ashton. We are in constant contact. Madame Ashton is a member of 3 institutions, so she is not member only European Parliament, because we were voted on her and accepted her. So we are the constituency for Madame Ashton, we, European Parliament. And she will come to European Parliament and to give report what is going on. And we are ready to help her in her activity, also in transatlantic relations. Development and climate, women, everything you asked, Madame, very clever way. Well, women, of course, is absolutely necessary. We are much better in Europe than you are in American Congress, because you have 11 or 12% of women. We have more than 25% of, as far as I remember. So it's necessary. Absolutely, we must unlock the potential of women in our society if we wouldn't like to lose, because it's absolutely necessary. It's also connected with research and with innovation, with being active in any fields, and so on, so on. And climate is finished.
Good.
Well, development and climate are connected. We must remember about that. No development aids without thinking about climate, because developing countries are in Africa. They are dying because not having water. In another places, they are dying because have floods, like in Bangladesh, or, well, sea level, 8,000 islands in Pacific. So you see, development and climate is connected.
I have been asked to
well, energy independence. Well, if we start with shells, we will be, from gas point of view, independent. We have a lot of fossil fuels, of course, but they are slightly difficult because of climate issue. Belarus is very important issue. We are very active in Belarus, but it is not only point of democracy. I would like to underline very strongly. It's also point of independence of Belarus. They are dependent economically very strongly on Russia today. So if we think about democratic Belarus, we must parallelly think about independence in Belarus. Even for opposition, which is very strong, as a matter of fact, even civil society. Lukashenko is a hard regime, but opposition is also stronger. I can assure you, we have a visit of independent candidate for presidential election 4 years ago in European Parliament. He was awarded a prize, Sakharov Prize, in European Parliament for peace, for human rights, and he's always answering the question. Both are important, because it is impossible to build democracy in future if it will be the case that Belarus will lose independence. So it's complicated. I would like to answer you, but it takes time to see the problem from many points of view. Everything takes time. I'm very glad I had a possibility to address it because you. Thank you very much.